Hey guys, welcome back to the What's Next podcast. Coming to you from beautiful Monterey, California, right here on the beach. Beautiful day today. I'm so honored to have this next guest with us. Miss, you're going to have to help me with it. It's Tien-Hsin, a.k.a. Cindy Wu.
Very good attempt.
Cindy Wu is a soloist on the violin. She's a chamber musician, educator all over North America, Asia, and Europe. Wow.
Well, you got to go bring your music to places.
Right. Your bio is as long as my leg. So we're just going to cover a few different things here. Spotlighted as the cover story of the Monterey County Weekly, September of 2023. Mm-hmm. Has that come out yet?
That was just 4 weeks ago.
Just came out. Yeah. Oh, congratulations.
Thank you.
Titled Young Power. So had a bunch of people in there, and you were...
I was one of them.
Right
and of
on.
course, it was a Mary Claire magazine, so it was all kinds of people, not just musicians.
Okay.
But I was one of those that they featured.
What's Mary Claire?
It's actually a international, I would call it fashion magazine.
Oh, I see.
But they have the Taiwanese sector, I guess. And then so I was,
right.
And yeah,
They
it was
picked
fun.
you, huh?
Yeah.
Cindy has been featured as a soloist with the orchestras such as National Symphony Orchestra of Taiwan, the Odessa Philharmonic Orchestra, the Russian State Symphony Orchestra, frequently plays at prestigious venues as the Kennedy Center, the Library of Congress, Carnegie Hall. Wow, that's crazy. The Lincoln Center, Museum of Arts, the Metropolitan Museum of Arts. You have to help me with that one. Deutsches Theater?
It's basically a Munich theater. Yeah,
Wow.
Dutch theater.
So you've played in all these places. You've been all over the world.
Yes, I mean I might have played close to maybe 1,000 concerts. So
Wow.
some of them have got to be good.
Yeah. I looked up one, and you were just going crazy on the violin. I sent it to Wade. He's like, "Wow,
Yeah.
that's crazy." Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy. So when you first came in, we were talking a little bit, and you said you were a violin player, you're a soloist, you like to teach. So I'm thinking maybe you're like a neighborhood teacher or something, working with the kids.
Well, I'm definitely a little neighborhood teacher,
Right.
because everywhere I go, there are people that will find me. So I do have like 4 to 5 students in town right now.
Oh, do you really?
And yeah, I do. And but my first teaching job was USC.
Okay.
So it was my first job. I was 25, and I started teaching at a major university.
Wow.
And so, but I believe that teaching is part of the duty as a musician, because what you learn is so valuable. And then, I recently talked to a teacher of mine also on a podcast, and then he said something that was so inspiring. He said, music, we don't own it. And what we learn about it, we got to keep sharing it forward to keep the music alive.
Right.
So, that I think that's the spirit that wherever I go, I'm going to teach some. But what I usually do the most is actually playing chamber music and making concert programs.
Chamber music. Mm-hmm. See, I don't know the difference. But you're going to have to unpack that a little bit for me. I was making some notes here. Like you hear the term concert musician, like a classical musician, and then there's classical chamber musician. Are they all different things?
Yes, I can help unpacking all of that.
Do tell.
So first, classical music, I think people are a little more familiar, but I'm happy to fine-tune that a little bit more for people. But chamber music is a type of performance that has its own repertoire written all for specifically chamber music. So as you know, there are orchestral music, there are symphonic music that are all with big bands, like
Sure,
I say
right.
band because,
Yeah, yeah.
that's easier to understand, the big orchestras, big bands. But, and then you also, of course, understand soloist. That means you're the one person that's performing on your own, and sometimes maybe on your own in front of the orchestra. But chamber music is actually somewhat in between. Not that the thing is just about in between. Actually, chamber music repertoire and history is absolutely amazing. But what it does is there are usually a small number of people, but every single person plays their own part, but they have to bring their own thing into this group to make a group sound. So in orchestra, if you're a violinist, you're playing the same thing as maybe 15 to 20 other people. But if you're in chamber music, you have your own part, and then you have every creative say in how you work with other people, how you express your part, and you contribute so much more your individual artistry when you play chamber music. And what it's also different from solo is that when you play solo, a lot of times you're playing by yourself and working on your own thoughts. So for someone like me who is a learning junkie, like I need more information. I want to be doing more.
Sure.
So chamber music keeps me so much busier and actually enriched by having so much to do. I have to focus on the ensemble playing with people. I also have to focus on the same technical and agility like a soloist, but I also have to learn about a lot of like the history and then logic behind how to make artistic choices or technical choices. I just feel like I was much more inspired by this, the depth of having to excel in chamber music. And then in the end, I was so in love with this art, I just wanted to focus on having a career playing chamber music.
I see. So is there something in your head that's saying you want to play it exactly the way it was written? Or do you want to put your own flavor to it?
There's always going to be your own flavor.
Okay.
There's
just
always
the way you
going
play.
to be. Yes. And then so that also comes from a lot of things besides personal expression, but the accuracy or a lot of I would say including how you, because part of being a musician a lot of times is problem solving, because music is, there's no perfection.
Right.
Technique, there's no perfection. Musicality or how good your expression is, there's no perfection. So a lot of times you actually end up, you play like who you are because of how you make choices, what your weaknesses and your strengths, as well as your fears and vulnerability, that all go into how you make a musical and technical choice in the end. And then that will tell who you are. Like something maybe a little easier for people to understand. For example, if you're going to play a note that is very brilliant and very exciting, and then so there is a way you can get to that note that has 100% risk, but it's going to get more excitement out of it. Or there's another way that's 70% risk, that's slightly less exciting. There is a way to get there perfectly fine with 20% excitement. So how a person makes a choice will depend on what a risk taker, as well as their comfort level in taking risks, as well as their accuracy. It is everything that comes into play with every single choice you have in the music. Wow. And in chamber music, it's not just technical. How you, this is also, I think it's a fun example to talk about. So I think I can say it because I can say confidently that I'm usually a colleague that has everybody's back.
Oh, I see.
So when things happen, there are lots of damage controls that almost to a point that the audience cannot tell things are happening. Right. But we can tell little fine, very tiny little things. People are freaking out, anxious, or made a mistake. And so I am the person who will always decide to stand by my colleague and make them feel comfortable and help them. And most people in the audience will never feel that, except maybe they might feel like, oh, this group especially feel very unified and the people seem to like each other, right? Those are little things. But then how you make a choice as a colleague, but there are people that are not comfortable, not because they don't choose to support their colleagues, but because they're limited. Maybe they're freaking out. Other people freak out, they freak out, right?
That might
and then
be right.
so if they freak out more because other people freak out, then they might first is try to calm down themselves, right? And then so you see, this is where the personalities come out. It's much more complex than just simply like how do you feel at the moment.
Yeah.
A lot of times is who you are, your character, and your how solid you build your performance and technique and everything, or how spontaneous you have your ideas. Or are you coming up with ideas on the spot? Are you someone willing to go with ideas thrown at you? That also happens.
Right.
Choice making.
Right.
Yeah.
But everybody will pick up a piece of music and play it a little differently.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
And every time they play, it's going to be a little different
Sure.
too. Unless they're really control freak. There are people that would like to play every single time exactly the same. That is hard too. That is
Right.
really hard.
Right.
So I admire that skill if someone can do that. But I usually feel like a little spontaneity might keep the music making alive more.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Seems like I heard a story about somebody that was a master, I believe they were a violin player, that they had tried to master a piece of music. Mm-hmm. And then once they mastered it, it was like, that's kind of boring. Now go back and maybe change some things up and do something more personal. Mm-hmm. You know, now that he found, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
He's found the perfection. It's like, kind of boring now that you've mastered it, right?
Well, this is why it's very important to. It's almost like you have to control your you have to navigate your how do you call it, mindset.
Ah, right.
So, you know, because there really is no perfection. There is perfection to what you are now. So there is a story I know from a teacher that actually already passed away about 10 years ago. His name is David Sawyer. He was the cellist of the most, one of really like the legendary string quartet.
Right.
And then it was the Guarneri string quartet. So, and then this happened to a classmate of mine from my school, Curtis Institute of Music.
Good.
So, this cello student of David Sawyer's played a piece for him when he was a student at school. And then so apparently Mr. Sawyer told him, this place, you got to play like this and like that. And then, you know, don't forget, do this. Okay, 10 years later. So because a lot of pieces you got to hone for the rest of your life. He came back to play for him way after school, the same piece. He got to the same spot. And then Mr. Sawyer told him something different. And then he's like, Mr. Sawyer, but you told me back then that I got to do this and then go like this. And David Sawyer said, that means I have evolved and you haven't.
Right, right, yeah, right.
That's
Just
the
in
spirit.
10 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, right, right.
Yeah.
So he wanted to play it a little different as he got older.
Well,
he found the value in maybe putting a little more personality into it.
Well, not necessarily more personality, but the evolving is something, you know, I think everybody would know some artists or some musicians that actually maybe a certain period of their life, their art is, you know, for the lack of better word, better. Mm. So, you know, you can say Picasso's certain period is the best of his work, right? And that's the same thing with musicians. The point is continue to evolve. You can't really stop evolving. Just like, you know, every single time you come back to the piece, you got to be something different. And there's no guarantee you're only evolving better. Mm. But you still have to keep evolving because your mind has to keep changing, because the only thing that should not happen is stopping. As an artist, like you should never stop thinking about what is the next step for your art to be like. So, you know, and then so, of course, I didn't understand this when I was younger, but more and more I realized, oh, there are some of these musicians, when they get older, I didn't feel like they got better. Mm. But that's also a part of it. I don't think the artist's work is, you know, after they reach a certain level, it's just about better. Because what is better? How do you even define better?
Exactly.
Some people might think that's better, just because I don't think so. But so that's the thing. I feel like part of, you know, I always say artist actually is more like a researcher. Mm-hmm. So what you do is not just like turning out product, but product is along the way that you are almost having just some of these mementos of the middle of your research. And what is the end? I don't know.
Right.
You die, I guess.
Yeah, that's the end.
That's the end for everybody.
And they can pick up the ball, and whoever picks up the ball and runs with it,
that's
change
right.
it from there.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, I came across this
Mm-hmm.
YouTube artist, and it's called Two Cellos.
Oh.
You ever heard of them?
I've heard of them, yeah.
And they play like rock and roll.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And it's like a classic sound, but they're playing rock and roll tunes, you know? So, like, people associate with classical music with Bach and Beethoven, that kind of thing. Who decides how it's going to be played, or explain it?
Yeah, I would
you know
love
what I'm
to.
saying?
Yes, I think that actually is not often well defined in people's mind, nor by ourselves. So I have always, I thought about this question for a very long time, and I think there is a great way to explain what makes something classical music. So I also often play pieces that are totally like jazz influence, or when you look at the history of music, there's like gypsy music, there's like Hungarian, and then all kinds of folk music influence. So what makes something classical is actually about the process of composing. And this process of composing is not as simple as writing a song. But what they do, the composers are often, I'll give an example of Beethoven a little later, but what the composers often do is they have a bunch of building blocks, everything from keys, notes, rhythm, texture, instrumentation, to expressions and range and all kinds of things, characters, so many things. Let's say maybe they have like 50 building blocks, and then every single moment they can play with it to construct what they envision, their creation. And this process is very much like Lego, So imagine a child has a round piece, and then another piece is red, and this one turns, and that one is a person. And then what can we make at the end? Well, the child be like, I want to make a dinosaur, or the next day a starship. Right? Sure. And this is what composers do, is they are trying to craft an experience, a premeditated experience that is different from like the improvisation of jazz with the grid. Classical music, you are premeditating the entire experience. Of course, there's going to be variation on the performers we already mentioned, but the experience of the piece is crafted. And so one big example is a piece that I always like to talk about, which is Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, the Fate Symphony. It goes like da 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 da. Sure. Everybody knows, right? So what people don't exactly know is that this piece, the first movement, is constructed by completely one building block, which is the four notes that you hear in the beginning, because it goes like dun 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 dun. He goes to a different key. Dun 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 dun, right? And he goes to a different speed. Da 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 dee, da 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 dee 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 da. He makes it into a phrase from the little pieces, and the next one da 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 da. And then he has people going conversation. Da 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 dee 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 da dum da 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 dee dee da 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 ding dum da. Now the beginning comes back. Dun 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 dun. Right? The entire first movement is that little red round piece of Lego in the child's hand, and that is making into his entire amazing piece of work. And that is the process of classical music, is that playing with the composition. And then what we do, a lot of times the performers, we're more like the people that are the medium. We're the people that end up bringing out these experiences, bringing alive these experiences that have been translated onto paper into this thing that people can experience, in the sound version. So that's actually, I think it's a best way of describing classical music, is using all the building blocks of music and playing and creating these experiences as pieces.
That's always blown me away. I think of the mind work of somebody like Mozart or something. Do they know everything about all of the instruments? They must be able to hear in their head what they want to put on the paper, right? And
yes.
So they must know everything about the flute, the French horn, the bass, the percussion, the violinist, the strings. They must know everything in order to sit down and write that and make it sound good together.
Well,
That's amazing.
That's a great thought, because I think it's a little bit of I wouldn't say completely, but it's a little bit of a lost art.
I bet.
Because I mean, imagine this: Beethoven was deaf, at the end of his life, so he definitely didn't hear. He couldn't play with the instruments around him to write pieces. He really imagined what should come out. But Mozart has a quote that I've always loved, and I love telling people, because I think most people would not have imagined Mozart to be like this. So everybody knows him to be the biggest prodigy, like ever in history, right? And then he even died so young, like he was like 35 or something. And so people just think about him as just like he was born to be amazing. But he has this quote and said that people seem to think that my art comes easy to me, but the truth is that nobody knows more about harmony, structure, and all of these things that I described, the building blocks. Nobody knows these things and nobody has studied the old masters the way he did, for him to have become so knowledgeable at such a young age, to come across like a prodigy. And I totally believe that, because his music, yes, it's so intuitive. There must be some sort of extreme talent in there, but there's no way it's not built with tremendous knowledge.
Yeah.
It's just the harmony is perfection. Texture is perfection. Like, there are still instrumentations that he has written back then and nobody has written better.
Really?
Still.
Wow.
And then the things that I feel like, of course, there are still going to be people who are fantastic, today. But I feel like I come across a lot of people who don't even know how to write for, let's say, the most basic instruments is piano and violin, right? Mm-hmm. And then they're calling themselves composers, right? And then so imagine this is what Mozart and Beethoven, all of these, Bach, like they wrote like thousands of pieces. And then they're still like probably pretty humble about it. And then there are people who write like 5 pieces and call themselves like composers, 5 bad pieces or something. Who knows?
Depends on how good they are, really, I guess.
Right. And then so I feel like it's a little bit of I feel like maybe it's because there's too much Netflix and like people, Disney Plus, all these things, PlayStation, like too distracting. Zelda, including myself. So just like there's people are not really like that focused anymore on honing their art to become as knowledgeable, as good at what they do, to really master. Yeah.
What did Mozart have at his disposal to study though at that time? He's not like he couldn't get on the internet, and he only had a certain amount, and he didn't travel well back then.
Well, actually, so Mozart, his father was a very well-known pedagogue.
Oh, I see.
So was already, his father has a book on violin playing. And then, so he definitely was born into incredible knowledge already. But, Mozart himself, I don't know like a striking story the way I know about Bach, but when Bach was young, I think maybe 20-something, I think there was a teacher he really wanted to study with, and the name was Buxtehude. And then so Bach apparently, maybe this is the time to go on the internet and search, but I think I think he went about like quite a few miles, something like maybe he traveled a real great distance to go study with this person. Maybe like, I don't know, like what is a great distance? Like
sure, right.
Well, to me, it's 5 miles. But
that's a long way.
But for him, maybe it was like, like 200? I don't know. Yeah. So he really trekked that long to go study with this person. And Bach's real job was resident at a church. So he was writing music, like really pumping out like every single week for all what the church needed. And then... So I feel like the working, they're practicing, like our practicing is practicing on the instrument, but they're practicing of composing and studying. It's like, they probably went to so many concerts. They probably were surrounded by so many musicians. Their family members are musicians. They're constantly experimenting. You know, I feel like experimenting is also in a luxury. Maybe that's killed by our, you know, I don't know, economy. You know, it's like, how do we have time to not work and just experiment for a month? Who can?
Right.
So I think it's a different time, and without the Netflix and all those things, and then the health insurance and mortgage, maybe they could really focus on spending all of their time working on their art.
Right.
No excuse though. I still practice very hard.
Sure. Right. So you got in young, obviously. Your parents got you into it.
Yes.
So,
I was 7 when I started violin, but 5 when I was piano, which is not considered that early. But none of my family are musicians, but they clearly appreciate it enough, and then I showed promise when I was young.
Oh, I see. Right. Yeah, how fun. Now, I know a lot of people that have gone into music and acting and, you know, all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's quite a crapshoot whether you're going to make it or not.
Right.
You know? And, you know, you always hear about the starving artists and, you know, all that kind of thing. And, you know, that doesn't seem like a path you'd want to go on.
Right.
Because, like, playing football or something, the chances of getting to the big league are very slim, you know? So what... walk me through that. What was your mindset? Did you have like a backup in case, or?
I didn't exactly have a backup, but my attitude was always, if I really couldn't make a living doing music, then I wouldn't do it.
Right.
And then I think I was always smart, and I was always good at a lot of things. So I probably had options if I really was going to change career. But you know, the starving artist, I wouldn't say that it's not real, but I also think, you know, I think starving should be a period and not a forever thing.
Right.
I think if you starve like beyond your, you know, first trying to make it period, then you maybe should do something else.
Yeah.
I mean, if you can get past that and then become, you know, get some sort of economy going, you know, for your career, then you should do something else. And but the truth really is that I feel like this industry lacks, you know, because I hear stories about more and more I get into the organizational stuff, you know, planning concerts. I learned a lot more about running organizations, you know, in the past 15 years. And I think this industry lacks great infrastructure. And that means, you know, like an example. So I heard a story from a friend who is also kind of has a similar path like me, and then is doing a lot of organization stuff, artistic planning. She said that she has a friend who was a very successful business person in the tech world and loves music. And then so after doing a certain job for a while and has accumulated a certain amount of financial security, he wanted to throw his time into helping art organizations. And then so he went into being on the board and then to actually provide some real like help in a major organization. And after a couple of years, he left very disappointed because he felt like what he felt like was needed for the art, for this organization to thrive, it just was not possible to do it. It because of so many different things. I don't know what his specific story was, but from my own personal experience, I completely believe it.
Yeah.
Because, you know, like, so my husband is in tech. You know, he's an engineer, computer scientist. And then so if he were involved in a, let's say he's been in a research institute and then now a startup. And so every company or institute in that world is built from the ground up with employees that do this and managers that do that. And here's, you know, even like packaging people. And there's those people that manage the whatever it's called, you know, the presentation, you know, IT, you know, or people that are out there lobbying, right? In the art world, it's almost like people are like, okay, let's start with just sort of like, I'll just do everything on my own. It's like a forced entrepreneurship that my husband calls. And then so you're forced to like, okay, I'm going to try and make the website myself, and then, do the ticketing myself, and then wipe chairs myself, and then go to Costco to get food for the reception. And I still have to play the music and hire the musicians and arrange rehearsal space and fundraise.
Takes your mind away from the music itself, doesn't it?
Right.
Yeah.
And then so it's like a forced entrepreneurship without I wish that the art world starts with, here are the basic, fundamental stuff for a project to thrive. And then here are the legit ways to get all of that, the resources and whatever. It just doesn't exist. And so what I find that is difficult for me to see, getting to this point in my career after like a few decades, whenever an organization is suffering or just not thriving, then the first moving piece in terms of finances is artist fee. Mm. So they just reduce that, or maybe not reduce that, just, not let that grow with the inflation. And, I know there are concerts that are, some colleagues of mine and I, we talk about this, like, how can a series that has existed for, let's say, 30 years and are trying to pay artists $400 to play a concert? What are we supposed to do with $400?
Exactly.
Yeah, seriously, you go jaywalking out and then half of that is gone. Yeah.
Exactly.
So,
we've talked about that before, how expensive it is.
Right.
To do what you do.
Right.
It's not an option to be a starving artist.
Right. And then what people don't even realize, I mean, for my type, okay, so most people see that I carry a violin, So if I say it's expensive, what is the number you would guess it would be around?
For the violin itself? Or?
Yeah, the violin. Think about what the general public might guess what expensive is.
Right, because I looked at some of the instruments that you played, so I'm not even going to guess what something from the 1700s costs. I have no idea, but I would figure something, around $1,000, $5,000. It could be all different levels, I would imagine.
If I might say $5,000 is a piece of shit.
Is it really? That would be the worst piece. That's a fiddle.
Oh no! I mean, it's not so much like that, but seriously, I would say you cannot get a really something to use for real. Okay, I'm going to give a more complete picture. So the best violin, I sort of think of violin in three different periods. One of them is the old one, the 1700s, 1600s, 1700s, that kind of history to it.
Yeah.
And so the best violin for that kind of historic value would be in the 15, 20 million. Yeah.
Really?
Yes. Okay. So obviously, if people are paying people $400,
they're not going to get $15 million.
No. Okay.
Probably.
Right. So what do musicians do? So of course, we for those that are more financially stable with the kind of concerts that we do or organizations, then some people will attempt at we call it the modern Italian, not contemporary, modern something else, or maybe like a 1800 German or whatever, something not in the golden period and place. And then so let's say a violin that's around 1900, born 1900, or just not a mainstream Italian or something that sounds really good, has good history, that might be around the top of that period would be 200,000.
Mm.
Yeah, and then let's also express that it's not possible to even play at the top level without a good tool. It's just not possible. You really need. It's half the battle. And then so now you go to the contemporary, the best maker in this world. In my opinion, actually, I have one of his instruments and that he made for me. I waited 5 years. And then so his instrument would be already also in the 100,000 something. So imagine a musician that, is playing at the top level and then needs something that's the best. And then also wants to have children and own a house, right? I always say this, like musicians should also be people that deserve to join the human race of owning a home and having a family. But we are forced pretty much to have to own a $100,000, $200,000, or possibly $500,000 instrument. If without that, we can't even stay on the top of our game.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So, so it's like, it creates like this, starving artist. I feel like that is, in my opinion, is the industry not having good infrastructure, not doing it right. And that's also why, I probably, a lot of musicians would think a lot of things very controversial that we usually don't want to tell people.
Yeah, right, sure.
One of them for sure is, some orchestras go on strike. So one of my students' mom also said this. So when they found out that the base pay for the San Francisco Symphony Orchestra as a member is something like, I can't give the exact number, but it's like at least 120 or something a year. And of course, people are like, oh, that's great, right? And so, okay, so I'm glad that your response is like, oh, that's amazing, because
it's okay,
right.
But for somebody that's done this since they were a child,
yes,
seems like they should make 5 times that.
And
right?
Yeah, exactly. You know what? And then what we're talking about is one of the top orchestras in this entire world.
Really?
Right? I mean, if you are the top engineer of anything, do you think people would pay you more than $500,000? Probably. You're the top engineer, probably a lot more.
Ball
top
players are
doctor,
making millions.
Yeah. So if you are at the top of your level of in the world of what you do in the world, it should be in that ballpark. But in music, $120,000. And you know what people say about it? How ungrateful. They love what they do. They do what they love.
Sure.
And then this is a lot of money.
Right.
But the truth is, why is our industry like that?
Yeah.
Like even working at the top of the industry, a lot of times I have to fight people to pay for my flight.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
I mean, I should be flown like first class. No,
exactly.
I'm just kidding. I mean, I would like to, but
sure.
No, I'm just kidding. I have been before, but I'm just saying like it's very incredibly rare. Like any musician actually is treated at the top of the game and treated like top of game in other industry.
Right.
Yeah, we're just like like a bunch of peasants.
Right, right.
Yeah. So I think it's the industry. I think starving artists, it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be.
Yeah.
I think if people are truly good, I talk about two sides. If people, get to a certain age and then cannot make a living somehow, then maybe that really isn't their calling, right? But at the same time, the industry is also not helping. So at the two extremes.
Just going through some notes. I've got one of my sons has a friend, and he has been playing the piano forever, since he was little. Yeah. And he hates it. Every time he comes over, when the kids were young, it's like, come on, Jerry, play me some music. I want it because he's just amazing at it.
Yeah.
I don't want it. His mom makes him do it, and he hates it. And is that pretty common, or that's what was I don't know what I was getting to. What is it that is there a particular traits that you find in people that are not? I guess Jerry was like he just was maybe lazy. He just didn't like the practice. He didn't like to be forced. Is there something that jumps out at you? You've taught a lot of people.
Yes.
You know what I'm getting at? Like, is
yes.
there something that...
I'm actually very curious. So how long ago was this?
Well, my son's 34 now, so it's probably 15 years.
So
ago.
I want you to go back and ask them if he still hates music.
You think at that time, just being in high school, he just had enough?
I actually think, because I have met a lot of people that play music when they're young. Not all of them hate it when they're young, but I don't know if I can put it this way. It's a funny way, because I like to say things sometimes maybe a little bit in a funny interpretation, but also like very honest.
Sure, right.
So I think after a certain point, you go through life and you realize, oh, there isn't that much better than music.
Right. Yeah.
Most things suck. You know.
Yeah, right.
I think it's actually kind of like that. It's like, I think when you're young, when your life is so focused on like, oh, practice lessons, and then your mom yells at you, and then your teacher yells at you, and then you're just not doing well, then you really do not find interest in this action. But once you have gone through life, and let's say lots of things are awful. Let's say, going to work is awful,
Sure.
and then your boss is a terrible person, and then something else, anything that you hate, you'll realize that little moment of being able to relate to this instrument and just have that relationship with the instrument is actually quite precious. There isn't much else, right?
That's what I think.
So you should go back and then ask if they still hate it,
right?
Because I really do think most people come around at the much later in life to really appreciate, and then a lot of people wish that they were pushed to take more lessons. I mean, I know someone in this community, a friend of mine, that his son is taking lessons. And then so his son just isn't so interested. And then, of course, he goes into the lesson and take notes. And then so his son's attention span is short. And then so at the end of the lesson, he's just like, well, if he won't take the lesson, can I use the rest of the lesson for me to learn the violin? Yes.
Yeah, because he's at the age now where you can appreciate it.
Yeah, and I love that. I actually was just like, that is so amazing, because I think sometimes maybe he was like his son, maybe he didn't appreciate the same way when he was young, but now he's just like, wow, it must be so precious to have that experience of playing music. So I do know plenty. But I have one example of a student, maybe her teacher before me was very harsh, and then so she started having really bad experience.
Right.
Right now she's she went through 2 degrees in music already, chosen by herself. But so prove that it already changed. But our first lesson was pretty funny, because she came into a lesson, and then her mom already prepped me and said that she's not so into music these days, really does not like to play, and we're hoping to, because most parents know this is going to be so precious, so they're like, we're hoping that they would like music more later, right? Okay, so she came into the lesson, so she played, clearly looked like she didn't like it. And then so I'm like, so what do you like? I think she was maybe 10th grade or something, so she's thinking about what she would do later. I'm like, so what do you like? She's like, photography. I was like, wow, if you were to find something even more useless than music, you found it. I don't mean useless as in photography is useless, but it's as a degree.
Sure.
It's just that's even harder, because everybody thinks they're a photographer.
Right.
At least music, you gotta go play in tune, play right notes, photographer. Everybody can just pick up the camera and then think they're a photographer,
Sure.
right? And then so we shared a good laugh after I said that.
Yeah, right.
And then so we just slowly sorted it out. And then within a year and a half, she decided to go into music herself, and then she's still going full professional in music. So, and then I would say that's not the only person I've dealt with. And then I think I'm not someone that has really gotten the secret of making people like music, but I think most of the times they like me first, because I'm usually pretty funny.
Right.
And then in the process, I think I make them like themselves in the process of playing music. So some of them really do change.
That's the key to a lot of things, is having a teacher that you like.
I think so.
You can relate to.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's kind of what spurs people on to whatever they do for a profession. Oh, I just had this one teacher. Yeah, you hear that all the time. Right? You too, huh?
Well, I have many very great teachers. Yeah.
I read through the people that you were taught by, and I don't think I can pronounce most of the names. But So, well, that's kind of what I was trying to get across to my son's friend. It's like, you don't have any idea how much people my age wish they could do what you do, you know? And I think it has to do with a hardcore mother that was just driving them hard. Do you have any advice for parents that want their child to be musicians, to maybe lighten up on this? You got to be hardcore if you're going to make them practice that long and that much every day, right? So, I mean, there is that. You have to be the tough guy, but...
I don't exactly have the advice, but I definitely know that the pushing to a point that you all hate each other is not going to help.
Right.
But I think having a really great teacher also a lot of times will alleviate like your relationship with your children.
Sure.
Because like I was always this person, like, I mean, to be honest, like that same student, you know, I was always very honest, so I joke with her, and then so sometimes I would show her something I think is very cool, and I looked at her, I'm like, oh, it's not cool? Fine. And so at least I was very real about it. You know, it's like, and then sometimes I would say stuff like, you know, maybe you don't like music, but at least be someone who strives to do better. You know, like,
so whatever you do.
So I'm very, very honest when it comes to that, and I feel like most of the time, because I work with mostly teenagers, so I think they can really relate to this honesty.
Right.
And then, like, if they think it's not cool, you know. And then so like that same student, I remember, I think she was getting close to like audition time, you know, college applications, and then so her mom was very anxious, like, you know, when they come over, her mom is like, oh, here's the bag, here's the music to this, that's the scales, and then here's this etudes, and sort of like this. And of course, like, she's like handing these things to me, and then tell me like, oh, and then next week is this thing, and so
right.
And then so when she and I started walking away, I was like, your mom stresses me out too.
Just so you know, you're not alone here.
Yes. And then so we sort of just like laughed.
Right.
And then so I think most of the time I am on my student's side. You know, I am more like a big sister. I actually am always like a big sister because I also have a young heart, you know. Of course, I have been through a lot of like extreme discipline, but I feel like I can really, really relate to that age group.
Sure.
And I think being on their side, you know, and then relating to them. And I feel like a lot of my lessons are also like therapy, you know,
sure.
Because I feel like you have to get to the bottom. Like sometimes like it's not even what they say, it's how they feel. And you can find out a lot about what they feel through, you know, a few pieces of how they express themselves here and there. Right. And then you can also feel out their relationship with their parents. So I think in general is finding a good teacher is very, very important. And, you know, like every student is going to need different things. And then so a teacher that can really see that, like, for example, like I tell one of my students' parent, like, you know, all you should do to help because they really want to help, you know. Most of the parents, I mean, if they're bothering to take them to violin lessons, really, really love their children and want their children to have the best thing, right?
Sure.
So I would be like, here's why you can help, you know, like, and then I'll show you a few different options. So the one I talked about from a long time ago, I swear it was like, oh, you started to practice a little bit more these days. What can we get you to practice 5 days in a row for an hour each day? What do you like? Money? You know?
Right.
You know? And then so she's like, yeah, I kind of like money. So I was like, how much? And then so it's like, let's propose this to your mom. So really, when the mom came, I'm like, how about this? Abby and I, sorry, I said her name. It's fine. She's an
awesome.
adult now. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was like, Abby and I decided that if she were to practice 5 days in a row for an hour each day, then she's going to get $20 from you. And then the mom was really like, oh, $20. Okay. Yeah, exactly.
That's all it took?
Yes. And then but of course, like a few lessons later, I think there was a case, I think she won like a regional competition and then she won some prize money. And I was like telling her, it's like, don't let your parents manipulate you into buying a computer or something. They should get you a computer for school.
That's
like,
sure.
Yeah, so it's like, spend this money on something that you want. Don't let them, know. So I'm actually like, very, very good with the teenagers because I'm like their friends.
Well, you're very young.
Yeah. Well, no.
And you're very, well, you look
you.
very young.
Thank
and you're
you.
very, I can see where you would, I can see where you'd get along with the younger kids, the teenagers, where they would really look up to you.
Yeah.
As not only you're cool, you're funny, but you also have this laundry list of all the things you've done and played, and they have, it's like, I'm awesome. Not to say that, but
Well, I hope so. I hope so.
That's what they think, obviously.
Well, I hope so.
Yeah.
Some of them probably are terrified.
Right. That's another thing too.
That's
holy cow! I got who for a teacher?
Yeah, I mean, some of them need that, right? Some of them you can't scare them.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So.
Did you ever have some hard times? Like, you know what? I don't want to do this anymore.
Of course, like every other day. No, of course. I mean, the path is so hard.
Sure.
I mean, my real advice to people that want to go into music is don't.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I most of the time would say don't.
Yeah.
Especially when I see the person has interest in many different things, then I definitely would say music is not the one among all the things you're choosing from. But a lot of times they will go into music because, and then this is true, the ones that should go into music are the ones that you can see cannot possibly imagine doing anything else but music. And then that is a very, very strong character or like you won't miss it when you meet somebody like that.
Yeah.
And then it's not normal. It's just like, like basically when I was young, like I was so determined in the way I have discipline in my practicing. Like every day I would basically compete with myself on the exact second I would get home from school and start practicing. And I can persist that for years at a time, every single day, and then just want to work so hard and figure out how to play certain extremely difficult pieces, and that was the only thing I cared about. And I basically had I don't even think I knew how to cook, even though I was on my own since I was 14. I didn't really cook till I was like 20-something.
Really?
I don't know what I ate. I can't remember. But
No time for that.
Yeah, I don't care. All I care about was just to get good on the violin.
Sure.
And there are some of them you can tell that's their lifeline. That's the only thing they care about.
What was driving you? What was making you be that way? Did you know somebody of somebody you wanted to be like this particular person, or you just want to be better than yesterday's self?
I seriously don't know.
That's quite a drive.
Yeah, and I think most musicians, if you really ask them, like, if they say it's just this one violinist, it's not possible.
Right.
It's not.
It's more than that.
A person or something cannot drive you to practice more than 5 hours a day every single day in your life for like 10 years. No. Nothing can.
No.
So I think it's a lot of, if you have that passion and drive and then you have the right character for it, I think a person that is incredibly disciplined is really, really important as a musician. And the person who is really resilient and determined, that's also like completely like it's uncompromising that you got to have those character traits. But then alongside those things, very, very good nurturing, from teachers and inspirations, and that at very different points in your learning in music and growing as a musician, there will be different kind of nurturing. That's very important. And I think at any point, even for me, all the students that I have worked with in the past, I still am there for them. Like I will like respond to my students from 10 years ago, like in 5 minutes over texting, you know, if they, cool. Even if they haven't written me for 10 years, really? Right? And that because, you know, when you're there for them, and because you know that this life is so hard, and then they will need all the love and care, and even just like a little lifting at certain moments in every way they can. And if you're someone they're willing to even talk to when they need you, you should be there. And I think I had plenty great examples as teachers that have done that for me. So
sure.
It's important.
Did you have some teachers that you could call sometimes? Is that where you got that from? Or?
Oh, I still talk to my teachers all the time. Yeah, right. I talk to them regularly.
Really?
Yeah, just like texting. I mean, even if it's just like, you know, one of them, they're building a house, you know, a retirement house. And then, so he was showing me like the house plans, and then, you know, how expensive things were getting, you know, needing to sell an instrument. You know, I still talk to them all the time. It's lifelong friendships. It's great.
Sell my $5 million violin, build a retirement home.
I think he had an instrument that maybe it should be worth a couple million.
Woo!
Yeah.
So like from childhood all the way run through where you are now, what stands out as the worst part of becoming like a symphony orchestra chamber music, right?
Yes.
Right. Chamber musician. Such a long road.
Yeah.
Was it all roses and peaches and cream?
It was difficult in different ways all the time.
Yeah.
All the time. I think I had a pretty difficult childhood.
Right.
And then I pretty much just mostly practiced. Didn't really do anything else, like have sleepover, that kind of stuff.
That was your escape? You just jumped into music?
No, I think it was a combination of many different things, but I think in the end that was just like something I was very structured to do every single day, and maybe didn't have. I mean, I didn't like go see the movies with people, so I didn't even know what that was. Seriously, like didn't really think about doing anything else. And then, so coming to the States at 14, I was on my own. There were times that was difficult as well, but mostly because I feel like, you know, I was the best violinist in Taiwan around my time. And then so I came to the States, I was at Juilliard Pre-College, and then so the good people were everywhere, right? And then my goal was to get into my school, which was the Curtis Institute of Music, and then that was difficult to get in there. And then after getting to Curtis, because it's the best school ever, and then everybody was so good again. I was always like this. Is a big fish? No, small fish.
I was just gonna say that it's kind of like that, you know.
Always.
Big fish in a little pond to a...
Yes. And then so always going to the next one. And then so, of course, after Curtis, you graduated from the best school, and then you go into the real world, and that's different again. So every part was difficult for a different reason. It's like I can go and elaborate on every part, but I think if it were to be something that, you know, let's say music parents or musicians are listening to this, I would say probably the most challenging would be right around the time you graduate from school and to try to figure out what you're going to do. I think that part really is logistically the most difficult, because you want to be independent and you want to have work that inspire you, but also have very good money, you know, and good seeing to the future, stability and all of that. And so music like stability can also be a way of jumping into maybe a work situation that might not be as inspiring as the instability, choosing, you know. So a lot of times I think during that time, I remember when I was teaching at USC, right around graduation time, when people are supposed to figure out what they do next, there's usually a crying in the lessons, sort of. So every year, right around a certain time, most people come into the lessons and then talk to me, and they will cry.
Sure.
Because they really don't know what to do.
What's next?
Yeah, what's next? And then they really see nothing is next. So a lot of times you have to build these things, you know, and then there are lots of building. There's network building, project building, there's experience building, you know, bio and money and everything, right? And then a lot of them at that point, maybe they will lose the instrument that somebody lent to them, right? And then so you also have to have money to buy the instrument. So that's usually the time people jump the quickest into stability and then lose the opportunity to really see what they're capable of doing as an interesting career. So I think I was very lucky because I found some creative ways for me to sort of carved, you know, in Chinese, a blood path.
Right.
I think I did. Like,
Did
really just like, you know, I was very poor for quite a few years. But between some teaching, some work, and investing a lot into my skill, building repertoire and network and just, I think I have my eyes on the prize, which is what Madonna said, I think, right? So my eyes were on the prize of a career in chamber music, and I was able to, there were many times I felt like maybe I couldn't do it. Maybe I should just jump into the stability. But then I didn't. There were many people that encouraged me and felt like I had the character traits and skill level to do something more creative. And then I did. And then to get to the point that now I finally feel like, wow, so I am somebody in the chamber music world, that I'm very respected, and that people know my skill level. And, you know, and that takes lots of resilience and courage to, let's say, stay unstable for so long for the higher price.
Right.
Yeah.
So tell me again, you came over at 14, went to Juilliard at like 14, 15?
Yeah.
Jeez, oh Pete.
Well, that's it. You know, okay, maybe.
So like when you're thinking about like, I don't know if I'm cut out for this, or maybe I should do something different, your brain's going, wait a minute. You were in Juilliard at 15 years old. You're kind of a prodigy.
That's not what I thought.
Really?
Because I'm surrounded by Juilliard.
That's true. But
Yeah.
they're not 14 years old.
No, so
Some
Juilliard
more?
pre-college is for everybody that's...
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's the pre-college.
Oh, I
so
see.
everybody can be... You know, I was... you know, so Curtis Institute of Music is actually the school that I wanted to go to, which is like a Hogwarts for music.
Sure,
very,
right.
very small, very exclusive. Everyone who goes full tuition. And then so... it has the lower acceptance rate than like Harvard.
Really?
So basically that's the school I wanted to go to. And then I didn't get in, so I settled for Juilliard. Does that sound crazy or what?
Right.
So I didn't think I was good. I didn't get into Curtis, okay?
Right,
So
right.
I was in the finals, and that means I was the final like 10 or 20 people to get into school. They would accept maybe 3 to 5 people a year on the instrument, you know, at Curtis. Yeah. So it was after 4 years at Juilliard, I auditioned for Curtis again, and I got in. And
Then you got in. Oh,
and then that year, I also remember so when I was at Juilliard pre-college, a lot of students, when they get to that threshold, they would be auditioning for the college level, right? So Juilliard, Curtis, and Curtis is so hard to get into. And so my year, I was the only violinist from Juilliard that got into Curtis that year.
Wow.
And there was only one pianist from Juilliard pre-college that got into Curtis as well. So but you can imagine, it's like, you know, same mentality. I went into Curtis and I was surrounded by the Curtis.
Sure.
And they were even just like,
The
just
best
like
from all over the world?
yeah, just not
Really?
even human. Like they just like, you know, really, like I'll tell you, like a lot of people maybe have, you know, met me and then or work with me, and then they're like, oh wow, she's really like extraordinary in something. Seriously, like I went to school among people that I felt like their talent, abilities, and the amount of things they can do is unreachable for me.
Really?
I went to school with
Even
these
then?
people. Oh, absolutely.
Wow.
It's crazy.
Yeah. you've been all over the place. What's the most amazing place that you've been to? I mean, I see all these different places that I brought up earlier. Russian State Symphony Orchestra, all the Philharmonics, all this Library of Congress. Was anything like jump out at you like, holy cow, I made it? Or I mean, you've just been everywhere. I've never been out of the United States, so for you, reading this through at Carnegie Hall, Lincoln Center, Museum of Arts, Germany, like wow.
Well, I think when you're in the middle of it, you definitely don't think that way.
Yeah.
Because it's part of the process, right? You go from one concert to the next. That's all you do is like, I'm practicing this program, practicing that program, working with these people. But I think there are moments when I suddenly look back at the people I have worked with. Sometimes I look at that list and I think for someone like me who has worked with like generations of the most legendary artists, I feel like very few people, there's a very small number of people can have the list I have.
Yeah.
And then, including like, one of them is like Lynn Harrell is this cellist, really legendary. He passed away already. There's a segment that I think was Colbert Report did on him when he couldn't, he got his Delta miles taken away by Delta for buying cello seats. And then so Colbert Report made a very funny segment about him.
Really?
I mean, basically he's legendary. And then I have gotten to play with him and, toward the end of his life, and he loved me. And, also at our wedding, some of my friends, maybe not exactly at my level of the experience, like looked at the people that came to my wedding. They were like taking photos with these people. Yeah, but these people were like basically my colleagues that I regularly see. And, I feel sometimes when I look back at that these people see me as one of them. That's when I feel like I've made it. It's usually not a place or a hall or something. It's the people that I feel like one of them with.
Right.
And then that's when I really strike myself to feel like, I really should, be take the torch,
right.
to continue what, to sustain this art form.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was thinking about that when I was reading through those list of names that you'd worked with and all that. It's like, I mean, I don't know any of them. Obviously, I'm not in the, but it must be all different ages, all different areas where you must have learned so much from them, and just all the, like you say, just generations of players from before you.
Yeah.
And like you're picking up the ball or picking up the torch, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Think back, and like I said, I don't know any of them, but I played with so and so at Carnegie Hall or whatever. That's amazing.
But I have a few that I can tell you that you might know.
Yeah.
So of course I also have worked on some creative performance, different methods of performing or different styles than just a classical concert. And one of them I actually worked with quite a few times with Alan Alda.
From MASH.
Yeah.
Really? He's awesome.
Yeah, so he's someone that has, so his wife is a classical musician.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So he has always been a huge fan of chamber music.
Oh.
So he has worked with one of the series I play at, and then so a few programs that he would be narrating, and he would craft his own stories about our program, and he would be narrating alongside the music. So literally, Alan Alda is sitting on stage watching me play. Yes. So there are quite a few experiences like that. That was kind of cool. And then also, so since I'm not a pop music person, so I wouldn't be able to tell you which song, not because of whatever, but because I really can't remember what the song is called. But I have been part of the small group of recording one of Justin Bieber's songs.
Really?
Yep. Yeah. So there are a few cool things, and then there was like this, I think there was a Salvatore Ferragamo there's a museum of his that was being opened, and then there was a little documentary film, not documentary, I think it was a creative film that was made about him, and I played the music to that. So I have done a few cool things like that.
Yeah, I read somewhere in your bio recordings with the Spanish film composer. Mm-hmm. Was that one of those projects?
Well, because I lived in LA when I taught at USC, so some of those inquiries were bound to happen. So I have worked with some of the studios of Hans Zimmer, and then have recording on some things for maybe Steve Martin. And yeah, so it was bound to, and I was invited to perform at the Grammys, but I had a stupid chamber music concert I committed to. No, I mean, it's fine.
Can't let me out to go to the Grammys? Come on, man.
Well, it's my choice because
Yeah, sure.
I'm the kind of person to honor, my commitments,
Sure.
because I feel like if people hire you and then they completely rely on you to show up and do your thing.
Yeah.
Right? I feel like if you are the person that might back out because something else happens, then you might do that at any point. And then as a person who does organize concerts, this feeling sucks.
You wouldn't do that to somebody else.
No.
I don't think there's one person that you know that would fault you for going to play in the Grammys, though.
But still.
I
I still would not do that. And I think that's my character.
Right.
Yeah.
Get another chance.
Yeah.
So did they take music that you've already made for the movies and for like
some of it was
or
recording.
did you actually go in and record something for the who was it you said, the Steve Martin?
Some of those different ones. That's usually recording.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, recording for their albums and whatever.
Cool.
Or for whatever they were recording for.
Right.
Sometimes films, and I've done also a couple of video games. But those are
really?
yeah.
How fun.
But I mean, these are not my like main thing. The thing I care the most about is chamber music. So sometimes doing those things can be very cool, but I still wouldn't exchange my path, for those cool things.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's got to be all kinds of different pathways that you can go to once you get to that level. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, yeah, what kind of pathways could you go other than just being in an orchestra?
Well, I guess, yes, orchestra job is one of the ones people can clearly see that they can go into when they get to that,
Sure.
college level, graduating. You can also, get a teaching job.
Sure. That's what I was going to say.
And but I think most people that go into music dream of becoming a performer, right? Something that has a lot of creative say.
Right.
I think chamber music is a dream job
because
it's like you get to travel and hang out with your friends, because chamber music usually a few people.
Right.
And then most of the time it's a group of people you might already know because the circuit is pretty small. So you get to travel with your friends on location and go to cool places and play the best music with them. Which is something that if you're a soloist, you don't get to do that because you're traveling by yourself. And then when you go work with, like you play with orchestra, then, you're not friends with the, most times not friends with the conductor or the musicians in the orchestra.
Sure,
so you're really, you're lonely, like going back to the hotel and then go to the hotel bar, But for chamber music, you go to the hotel bar with your friends.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So it's really, I think it's a dream career, but to really carve it out was probably a very difficult one. But I think a lot of times there are musicians that do different portion of things. So if you think about, maybe the person is 20% teaching and 40% performing, and then another like 30% like organizing. And there are people that, do like half recording, mostly recording, and then work at a wine shop, or, like there are very different balances. And there are people that do administrative things alongside performing. And then some people decide to just sub in different orchestras and then take interesting gigs that are available. And so people really choose different paths and different balances for whatever they can accept, and that includes how much money you would have in that specific balance, time, like money and time and type of work to keep you feeling inspired, and then the kind of like, for example, if you're in chamber music and travel to play a lot, like you have to be really good at arranging travels and then deal with things falling apart. So the flight delayed, not making the connection, no suitcase, and then instrument problem. You know, people, there are just all kinds of things that happen all the time. And there's very rare trips, nothing happens. Like I've once was trying to fly back to Newark or something, and then after Newark, I was supposed to do a very virtuosic thing of taking the train to a central station and then transfer to another train to go upstate for rehearsal for a concert that's going to be, the concert is going to be in Maine. And then so I remember that, like, this is 3 different things that has to be all chained up or it falls apart, right?
It all has to work.
The first one went to Cincinnati.
Oh, no. Yeah. That's right off the bat.
It's like, what are you going to do from Cincinnati, right? So because of weather, right?
Sure.
So as a person that's like truly experienced, like me, like with the traveling, so what you do is, you know, assess the situation, right? What are your options and what is the amount of damage in each option? And then so, yeah, I mean, this is something
Truly.
We also have to know, like, we just knowing what options are and then what is the best way to get to the result. That also takes so much experience. So this example, I remember that I was seeing that if the weather was not going to change, that it was never going to go to Newark, right? So I believe that if it were to go somewhere nearby, let's say Philadelphia or whatever, how much time it's going to add, and then if you add more, then would you make the connection? And by the time you end up getting there, is there a rehearsal? You know, if it's like 9 p.m., 10 p.m., right, is it time to still have a rehearsal? So in the end, the things that when you are detoured that way, everybody is trying to, so you also have to think quickly or the seats are gone, right? So in the end, I very quickly decided that I let the musician on the other end know that
having problems.
Yes, and then
Right.
I'm not going to make it to the rehearsal.
Right.
So I am going to redirect my flight directly to Maine the next day. So maybe to get more rehearsal time, maybe everybody can leave early, you see. So this is another way of seeing whether that's a possibility. And then if you reroute that to Maine, then that work immediately. And then recently I also dealt with another thing where there's a stupid flight that for some reason the connection was supposed to come back here and then delayed to the next morning. And then I would have to like get a hotel or something. It's like, you know, that's also money lost. And you'll talk about instrument being expensive.
Right.
Like travel fails, it's very expensive. And then it's all on you. Nobody's going to like truly like pay for how expensive things are when things fail. So at that moment, I remember I was near the gate. I just deplaned from the first one,
Right.
found out the thing happened. And then so we were going to go to the next, the complete different terminal for the next flight. But when I heard this thing happen, and then I immediately just went to a random counter of the same company and be like, what do you think is my best option right now? Right? They have the computer, right? The computer is the same. They are connected to everything. So they told me that you have to go to one of those customer stations. And then so they told me, go to the customer station near the next gate. But immediately I already know, don't go to that one. That one's full. Everybody.
That was the first option, right?
Yeah. Everybody that is on this plane is going to be going to that one, be
Right.
directed to that one. So I immediately just asked a random like pilot person of the same company, is like, where's the closest customer service? And then so it's in a complete different direction. But I just assume that this one is going to be more available because once they're on the computer, they're going to be like, okay, so you want this seat and then you book this one, book you on that one. So after going through 30 people, they might be taking the options that you want, right? So what you need is get to a counter, right? So I went this complete different direction because I'm not getting on that flight anyway. There's no flight. I went to this other counter, basically one person in front of me. And I immediately said, just get me on any flight to Northern California. And then they're like, so, man, you know that it's 70 miles away from where you live, right? I was like, my husband is going to pick me up. Yeah. And my husband is used to this.
Sure.
He's used to all kinds of travel fails. Like, he can hear my voice, honey. Like, it's like, there is the call, and it's like, honey, right? Yeah. But he's so supportive. Like, he has done all kinds of virtuosic things to get me home or get me to the next place, get my instrument to the next place, like, all kinds of things. So that day, I was like, because if I didn't, because there were so few seats left, probably, even back to SFO. And then not to say there are fewer options at Sacramento or San Jose, right? So I'm just I wanted to SFO. I know that's the one's going to have the most options. Immediately just like lock it down. That seat is mine. Right. And I figure out the rest. Right. Because even if my husband can come get me, then I'll do the Monterey Airbus or whatever. Sure. Yeah, something. I'll figure out. I have so many friends in San Francisco. I'll go stay with them for a day, whatever.
Right.
But get me close by because it was no use. I was in Texas. So
don't have too many friends in Texas.
I have friends, but that's not going to get me home.
It's not going to get me home.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
I hope you know. Let me give you an example. When I was raising kids, the kids were little. Mm-hmm. I'm a blue collar guy. I build houses. Mm-hmm. I'm out in the freezing snow every day and just hating life. And, it's hard work.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, we would get tickets to the Grand Rapids Symphony Orchestra.
Yeah.
And my wife and I would get dressed to the nines, go down there, just have an amazing time listening to the chamber music. And it's a little bit outside of our wheelhouse, it's definitely, but it was a chance to get out, get dressed up and go out to dinner afterwards. Yeah. I hope you appreciate what you do does for people. Of my caliber anyways. I'm sure there's a lot of people that just go to the orchestra every week or whatever, but in our shoes, it was amazing. It was beautiful.
I really appreciate. I love the connection that I get to have with people. It's so, I'm basically like, any chance to meet people that are touched by my concerts, I get to know them personally. Right. Because it's important to me.
Sure, right. Yeah. We talked about this when you came into the shop. I was talking about what I know about muscle memory, whether it be trauma, physically or emotionally, but there's also a side of muscle memory that, and I told you this, I was talking to a group of nurses about muscle memory, and I used you as an not you personally, but a violinist as an example, or a guitar player, that they're not thinking where their fingers are. They're just hearing a note, or they want a note or a series of notes. I watched you do that one where you're all over the place, and you're, and it's like, I don't know how, as you're moving, you're still hitting every string perfectly. It's like obviously years and years of muscle memory. I think that's the most amazing thing. We're talking about that because my editor here is a guitar player, so he knows exactly what I'm talking about. He's not trying to figure out where his fingers are going. He's trying to make a sound. And that's so foreign to me.
Well, it becomes a language of yours.
A language.
Yeah.
That's a neat way to put it.
Just like learning a language, like you figure out words and then figure out the way you use them and then what they mean to you and different to other people. And it takes a long time for you to have a good command center. Like the brain, right? The command center to get your fingers to be connected to not just the notes, but the expression that you're going for. The expressive tools are a lot of times it feels like we're not thinking about notes. It's because we have to get the notes to a place that becomes easy enough that we're thinking about all those other important other tools.
Right.
So I think, it's like to get past the notes is absolutely, it's like the first step. Get past the notes so the other things start to come into play. Start
coming natural to you. So yeah, that makes sense. Well, I got a lot of things we need to talk about, and we're running out of time, so we'll have to have you back. I sure appreciate you coming in and educating us on this. And
it's fun.
I'm so honored to have you here.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. It's a pleasure.
I know we just got a couple minutes left. I want to talk just a couple of minutes about you are the founder of the Sun-Kissed Mozart. So can you give us a quick blurb on that?
Yeah.
Because I know that's probably one of your babies, and that's, you know.
Yes. So everywhere I have lived, which Philadelphia, New York, and Los Angeles, and now Monterey, I have organized concerts, to bring music to where I go. I think that's part of my passion, is to put musicians and music together, and I like to speak about the pieces and just about the concept and everything. And then so this is my baby in this town. And I have brought music into, actually at first it's just our living room, because we bought a house that has the capacity to have a little indoor intimate concert space.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so I've been doing that this is our 4th year, and then we actually have reached our full capacity. Our audience is like so awesome, and then everybody's like watching with sparkly eyes, and then so I'm working on maybe creating more access, because we can seat about 50 people per concert, and we have 49 chairs because one got chewed by the rat.
Got torn up.
Stupid detail. Yeah, right. but we're hoping to expand maybe to some public spaces, because most of our concerts have been pretty private. It's just our home. So I'm hoping to expand, and I hope people will be on the lookout for them. And then, we have our mailing list usually will be the first people to know about our concerts. So hopefully there are some beautiful places around Monterey, Carmel and Pacific Grove, and everywhere around this area. I can find that will be perfect space to experience chamber music in an intimate and dynamic way. And yeah, that's what I've been doing for our community. And I definitely hope anyone who think they would enjoy something like this would come and participate. Right.
Well, sounds like you're maxed out, but we need to, when you do find a bigger venue.
Yes.
where can we find you?
So our website is skmozart.com. So if you go on that, you can sign up for mailing list, and then because that's also my mailing list because like, for example, I'm going to play a show Thursday in San Francisco. It's a very creative thing working with the chocolate factory.
Hello.
Yeah, so it's a very cool thing. So I also sometimes, if I'm playing nearby at a different festival or something, I do also announce that, because a lot of our audience members are like, oh, we gotta have more. I want to hear more of your concerts, Cindy. So just let us know. So this is basically my mailing list, not only for our home concerts, but also when I play nearby. Sometimes I also create concerts at Hidden Valley, and I might even have appearances at different places. So that's the place to find where I play. And like recently when I had the cover story, and I also did one of their events, did a little show and tell, I also announced it through our mailing list, because not everybody will see the, either the advertisement in the paper or electronic things that they send out. So the people that are interested in what I do, I put it always in our own mailing list. So feel free to sign up to get updated, and there are opportunities. I mean, I think this season we only have exactly 7 seats left.
Really?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Need a bigger venue.
Yeah, but I will probably continue to do our home concert, but I think I will do maybe like a festival early summer.
Oh, fun.
That will do maybe multiple concerts in 1 week, and then some creative events to draw a bigger story about the programming. So yeah, and I already have all of that already in my mind.
Stacking up in the brain.
Yeah, and then also the musicians, and then so I'm just collecting the other resources to put this together.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, there might be some people out there that want their kids to come and learn some music from you. Is that on the website too? Are you still doing any teaching, or?
Well, I think I'm a little maxed out on the amount of teaching, and I usually teach about I would say seventh grade or 8th grade and up, and then somewhat about intermediate advanced-ish, because I still travel for work for performing. So I don't have a lot of space, but I know that there are people that are, that do get to know me early, in case when their children are older. So I always welcome that, because I already know some people that are sort of doing that. Their children are still maybe 7 years old or something, but they're hoping to keep a friendship. And then
where's the best place we can sample your music?
Well, I have lots of things on YouTube because the concert series, they all post their things. So there are plenty performances.
Would they find it under your name or would they find it under a particular?
So if you search up my name, I mean, even if you just search Cindy Wu violin, I would be the first person to come up. And then so I'm very easy to find, you know, like a Cindy Wu violin, most of what come up is going to be me. And that includes a YouTube channel, Instagram, and Facebook. I'm not a big social media person, but I do make sure that there is enough resource to know about what I do and website.
Well, that's what I need to know. Anything else you want to say before we
No, it's great. Oh, actually, there's one question I really wanted to answer, which is...
What's the question? What's the answer?
The question was, you know, what are the things people say to musicians that are like the
annoying things,
the most annoying things? Right. Okay, so I wouldn't even call it like completely annoying, but I love this question because I think people will be curious. So I'll tell you something that people do all the time when they see a violin case on me.
Yeah.
And I hope people are not offended when I say every single person will be like, oh, my neighbor's daughter's classmate used to play the bassoon. Somebody in their life, no matter how distant, has ever played an instrument for 5 minutes, and that becomes my business.
Right.
So that's people's thing. It's just like, oh yeah, and my dad's co-worker was a violinist when they're in 6th grade.
Right.
Like that's what people say to me all the time.
Well, and, you know, with where you've been and what you've done, you may be very intimidating to some people. So they're just trying to find somewhere they can get the foot in their door to start a conversation.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, Uncle Benny you know.
That's very helpful for me to hear that. Yes, thank you. I'll appreciate it more.
Right. They're probably scared to death. You don't know what to say to you.
Yeah.
Put it on somebody else. Bring in a third party.
Yeah, that's true. I'll treat it with more kindness.
Right. Well, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you so much. Right. It was a pleasure.
Wasn't so hard, was it?
It was really fun.
Easy. Perfect. All right. Thanks, guys.